Okay, I guess we're online, I think.
Yep.
So hello and welcome everyone to this round table. I'm here with two important figures in tabletop gaming, Vincent and Dave. Um, I'll actually let them speak for themselves, but quickly, Dave is a game designer and also a game researcher, such as myself. And also Vincent is the co-founder and CEO of Lucky Duck Games. And well, actually, quickly, if my slide is showing up, since we see Destinies and Sherlock Holmes right now, hopefully. Um, so I I didn't play those games just yet, but I could say that I tried Sherlock Holmes, the base game, before. Like to be honest, it didn't stick to me. But now that I read the comments and like I see the scores, it's absolutely great. You know, at least people are commenting on that way. And also, I didn't get to try Destinies, but also I watched some videos and like it looks great on table. I'm looking forward to trying them out. I think I'm going ahead of myself, so I'm just gonna let you introduce yourselves, and then I'll do mine.
Sure. Dave, do you want to go first?
Okay, yeah, I'm Dave Neale. I design narrative board games. I've done professionally now for the last few years. My most recent one is Sherlock Holmes Consultant Detective, the fourth set, the Baker Street Irregulars, which doesn't use an app. But I've also done some of the Unlock escape room games, which do use an app, and also a new game coming out with Ravensburger called Echoes, which also uses an app because it's very much based around sounds, basically. So I'm very much interested in all different ways of telling stories through board games, whether it's analog or hybrid, and the potential of hybrid games and best way of kind of creating games in that format. And I also have done research into play and games as part of the play research group at the University of Cambridge, PEDAL. Yeah, that's me, Vincent.
So I'm Vincent. I'm the co-founder of Lucky Duck. I actually come from a video game background. I've co-founded and run two video game companies. One of them was over 100 people. We were called the French Zynga, and we were doing social media. Social games on Facebook, on iPhone, and it's 2016 that I stepped away from digital to go into the beautiful world of physical board games, and it's with the release of Chronicles of Crime, Christmas 2018, that my old path and my new path kind of found a way together. So much so that we decided to 100% focus the company's future development into app-augmented narrative board game. This led to the arrival of Destinies, the Chronicles of Crime Millennium series, and we have actually Kids Chronicles, which is a 7+ experience coming up for Christmas at the end of the year, and plenty more app-driven, narrative-driven games coming up in the next year. So we are very much at the forefront of mixing digital and board game.
That's great. Yeah. So I actually forgot to mention Chronicles Crime. Well, to be honest, I tried the detective game that you are probably familiar with. It's kind of I don't know if maybe it's a rival game. That's pretty similar. Yeah, I really like that, and I didn't get the chance to try the Chronicles of Crime. So I think that I would like that as well. I'm looking forward to trying that, and I see that it's critically acclaimed. So let me just introduce myself as well. So I am a Fulbright postdoctoral scholar here at ASU, Embodied Games Lab, and I work on multiple stuff related to games. I'm mostly a researcher I mean, I design games as well, but mostly for research purposes. So mostly here for my Fulbright project, what I'm doing is I'm investigating games which can provide recovery experiences, which is like, relaxation and like stress reduction. Like, when you come home from a hard day's work and then you start playing games and so on. So it can be digital or physical, and how, or like what kind of designs are better for which people that can provide greater recovery experiences. This is kind of my agenda at this point, but also in the lab we're working on embodied games, which are defined as like, using body to play games, which can be applicable to tabletop games, but I've never seen such a thing yet. Like studies that mention embodied cognition and so on. It's mostly related to learning. And finally, yes, you guessed it right, I researched tabletop games as well. And during my time in the Netherlands, as I was a PhD student, I met with Peter. He was, designer and a big board gamer as well. We both played games and, started researching, player perspectives, motivation for gaming. I'll actually talk about them a little bit in a while. And so yeah, that's kind of my background and story at this point. So what I'm thinking is that, we could start with, I thought that we could maybe start with motivation for, analog gaming, but then I thought that maybe we could change things and like start with hybrid games, and then, pass on to motivation and see if that's applicable to hybrid games as well, if that's okay with you. So I'm gonna just quickly show you what we can you see the graph right now that I'm showing? Yeah, so this is kind of that comes from a paper from a good colleague of mine, Melissa. So this shows the cumulative published hybrid digital board games from 2011 to this point. So we can see that there's a trend here. Not quite exponential, but not also linear. But we can say that it's there's an interest in this, and it might increase as well in the upcoming years. So what we did was, in 2018, we looked into how how people's perspectives are towards those kind of games. So we find both negative and positive attitudes. So I'm gonna quickly mention them, and I'll ask you what you think of these things. So basically, we had answers in all aspects. There were some negative attitudes without reasons, and also there were some positive attitudes without reasons as well. Let's start with the negative ones. So people just said that they didn't like it. They will not buy these kind of games, hybrid games. They have no interest in it. They despise it. So there were some strong reactions as well. And then, just to mention a couple of reasons why they do not like those kind of games. They think that the technology can go obsolete, and it can be incompatible in future. So this is a common concern, like the most common one. And it might be valid as well, but we usually buy games and we don't play them forever, and mostly we play them a couple of times, and then the cult of the new, we need the urge to buy new ones and so on. But I think players like the idea that potential infinite replayability of games. So that's why this is a common concern that was emerged. Another one is presence of electronic screens. So some people really do not like those on tables, I think. It seems that way. And also another one they say is that it's a failed business. It's a video game imitation. Why should I play a tabletop game when it's on an app? And then they say that there are some difficulties and glitches, that there might be some problems in apps. Maybe they experienced it. Maybe they think that this might happen potentially. So they're refraining from using those kind of things. And also they lack the tactility, physicality of tabletop games, which I think apps do not actually decrease that, but that's also something that they think. So before I move on to like positive, or like quickly, let me just mention those, and then I'll give the floor to you. So then, for positive reasons, they mentioned that this is going to get supported. I like it. I love it. Giving examples, and they say that it enhances enjoyment, experience, and fun, which is which doesn't tell us much, but the other things will probably say more. Like it provides new tools for designers. So like designers have more tools in their hands, such as they can use it for adapting the game for a different number of players. They can hide information easily behind an app or a software. They can use multimedia effects, I think, that is powerful. Using sound, video, and so on. And you can use randomization with that. Maybe better than card shuffling or dice randomization. And also they say that it might decrease tediousness. It can streamline the rules. It can decrease the bookkeeping that needs to be done, if that needs to be done. And also it might provide better tutorials and so on. So yeah, I'd like to ask you if these make sense to you, or like did you consider those in your designs, or what do you think of these?
Are you talking about the positive or the negatives, or both?
You can start with any. Yeah, I just mentioned them also. Yeah.
Interestingly, the biggest number of all of them right now were fear of obsolescence, and on the negative side was 17%. I was like, wow. And I have to say, this is the number one we hear the most, because as a publisher in charge of promoting the work of our authors, and we're kind of at the forefront of some of this feedback ourselves. And here the easiest answer we've had to kind of remove that fear is that we always promise that Lucky Duck Games will share all source code in domain public if we ever run out of business, as a way to say, yeah, the source code will be given and will be re-implementable and recompilable in whatever is the latest trend, in the same way that we're playing with 20 years old version of some console, because the source code was ultimately recompiled and stuff. And the presence of electronics, I have to say, I can see this. My view is that the industry has had its renaissance because of this. I mean, for sure, this has created a level of very subtle form of what's the word? Lack of socialization. Sorry, I'm French. My name is Vincent. Nice to meet you all. But it has removed you socially behind your screen, and so there's this. Wow, it was really nice to spend some time together at the table. John, get that game. We'll play with the kid. That was great. That's things that I've seen around my table when I get guests around and I propose them to play a board game. They're like very intimidated at first. They're like, I don't know. And then at the end, everybody had a good time and wants to buy the board game. And so I can see that fear of the electronic coming back, because it was the reason why they fled away. And then the third one is something we have heard. Probably, I think this percentage are accurate given like my empirical observation of things, which is, this is not a board game. This is a video game. But I would say that all this trade-off and all this fighting of perception is still worth it, because the hybrid nature of, the digital hybrid, because I've also discovered that the word hybrid means nothing if you don't put digital hybrid. But the digital hybrid nature of this really brings incredible tool to game designers. And so we try to evangelize that reality to players. And I'm glad to see new tools for game designer. For Chronicles of Crime, these games simply could not exist as an index on a paper. It could not. And the reason is because there are so many parameters that the designer are using, which is based on the time of the day. Basically, it will force the player to have an insane amount of tokens and say, if the green token is flipped that way and the blue and you have the yellow token and it's 7 p.m., then go to number 177. It will be undigestible by nature if all this maintenance and state maintenance had to be done humanly. And and what that does is that it provides a much more thematic, much more dynamic storytelling to this. And ultimately, though, it means to me that the winner of this recipe of mixing digital and physical are the games that bring an app that is truly essential. If the answer to the question, can you play this game without the app too? And the answer is yes, then I think you failed, in my view. Is that then why the heck is there as one? Why is it hybrid in the first place? And the app really brings something completely different. And so I can relate to this.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Vincent just said. And interesting about the thing you said about releasing the code. I mean, the thing that it occurred to me that like the points, there's the positive and the negative, which are both in there, which are kind of the flip side of the same coin, right? There's the potential incompatibility in the future with coming technology, but there's also the fact that these things can be updated and adapted in a way that a purely analog board game cannot. You buy it, it's fixed. It's like that's it. You can buy like expansions and stuff, but like if there's an error in it, it has to be corrected at another print run. You have to buy it again if you want, Whereas obviously these games can update, they can remove errors, they can refine things based on data that comes in from people playing them. They can make puzzles more interesting. There's a lot of levers that can be pulled there precisely because it's code and it's technology that could not be pulled otherwise. And that's kind of the other side of the coin to this fear of the technology kind of not being there and them becoming incompatible in some way. And I think, the idea that Vincent just said about an app, it should kind of be essential. It should be something that the game cannot be what it is without that app. Although when you said that, Vincent, it immediately brought to mind, and this is kind of sort of a counterexample, but also support. It's a weird one. Was Alchemists, because Alchemists, which was an early app-based board game, I think, in terms of app-based board games in general. But it's a deductive puzzle, and quite a difficult deductive puzzle. And it depends on these relations between different alchemical ingredients being randomized at the start, and your job is to discover them. And when you mix ingredients, you use the app to determine what you get out of that, and then that helps you infer what they do and stuff like that. And the app just scans the cards and tells you what you make. But the game did include here is what you do if you don't want to use the app. And so I guess they included that because they wanted to reach that audience of people who are like, I don't want technology in my games. So it was advertised as having this mode. But the thing is, that mode is so like onerous that it kind of does fit into a game which is kind of needs the app, because the way it has to play it without the app is that you have another player who doesn't actually play. They just sit there, randomize all the stuff, have a screen, and then they tell all the other players what they find when they mix stuff. So it's kind of this option that no one would probably ever actually take.
And I think, and you have a good point though. I think it's also a byproduct of the year it was released. 2014 was also kind of, it was not quite the birth, but it was still an early time for smartphone. They were not widespread. It was not as availably accessible as they are right now, basically 7 years later. And so I think it was wise 7 years ago to go into a hybrid board game with a default mode, but also showing at which point it's cumbersome and not ideal to provide such experience. Yeah, thank you for this parallel.
Yeah, it's it just occurred to me as you said that. It was quite interesting. Good that came up. And I think this whole stuff that everything Vincent was talking about as well, there's this whole interesting thing, which I guess I didn't really latch onto until relatively recently, just the way in which a physical experience somehow changes things in a way which you can have essentially the same mechanisms and sort of the same thing happening digitally as physically, but there's some kind of big difference in there, and something people feel as this difference in that, which is actually very powerful. And on like sort of on paper, it doesn't really make logical sense. It's kind of like, well, you're basically doing the same stuff that you can do digitally, so surely the experience feels the same. But no, it feels incredibly different. And so I guess app-based games are in a way taking people who love that physical experience and adding in something that can enhance that experience by taking stuff from video games and things to put it into that physical experience. So when people say like, oh, well, it could be a video game, it's like, well, yeah, it could, but then it doesn't have the physical thing, which is kind of the point. Some people just love the physical thing, and the app is enhancing that and that experience in a way that nothing else really can.
Yeah, actually, this is a common one, and I think what often people who write this are people who have not played the game. Actually, we see a lot of, as a publisher, here's my scene. I check BGG rating. I shouldn't, but I do. Especially at the launch of a game, and you see those rating 1, and literally it's a 1 big red, the BGG 1, and it says, not a board game, an app, so not a board game. And it's obvious with that anger and this single sentence that person has not played. They are scared. This concept is really scary with these people. And actually, if they play the game, they discover that often in those things, the app is nothing more than a digital book. It is not an app. It is just a digitalized version of text. And it's just in a way less cumbersome than just 416. And actually, there is still very much something on the table that's very tangible. Cards, people to look at, combination, conversation, and this very thing that's completely centric to a board game. Which in French, the translation of a board game is that it's a jeu de société. It's a society game, and the French word in it is really defined by it's a game of interaction. It's an activity where we spend time together. And I think all of this board game, especially the successful one, cooperative, even competitive, have this thing where we spend time together. And a video game is not that. It will be, if it is, then in a remote way with a headset, with a very completely different experience. And it will not be together with a laugh, with a smile, in front of a table, and that's often lost in the fear of the device.
Yeah. So those are really good points, and picked up some of the things that I want to reiterate with you guys. So for instance, one thing that Vincent mentioned, promising the public that the source code will be public if we ever would be non-existent. Is that what that? Yeah. So that's something.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's a good way of forming trust between you and your players. So that was good. That might be an option to consider for other developers or publishers. I like that. And also needing the app versus it is an optional thing. It's always I think it's always a design decisions that you guys have to make. The Alchemist case, for instance, that was a good one from Dave. And and also I would like to bring the online updating thing up. So do you think that that will be more used in future in these kind of games? Like in the DLC style video games that they gave you content over and over and you have to buy it, or maybe in the tabletop case it might be free or not. I don't know. What do you think?
So I have some data to share here because actually Chronicles of Crime has both free extra content and paid extra content. It's a game that's now 3 years old. We gave to the community a tool for them to make their own story to use with their $40 games. And as of today, there is over 40 extra free scenario you can play that we created by the community. This is huge. Your little $40 box has now a 40. Obviously, the level of quality of those can vary tremendously, but it really shows that there is stuff. And on the other side, we also have been creating more content. And interestingly, they have been selling pretty well, and it took them a while to start selling. I guess it takes a while for people to start to consume entirely all the content that come with it. But it threw me off. For the first year, I thought we would never do it again because those sales were not picking up, and I was like, okay, well, we did it. We tried, but after a year of the game market, things started to really pick up for us, and we have started to have some really interesting on purely digital sales of extra scenarios, to a point where moving forward, I think we will do it for every other games we have, especially those that are basically a story-driven type of content. If we can do it, we will do it for sure.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned, the editor that the community can contribute as well. Yep. Sounds really good. Like, remember I mentioned the player's perspective, that they think that the potential replayability of the game is decreased by the introduction of the digitals, but in that way you're actually increasing the potential replayability of the game. That's kind of a trade-off, but that's good. Editor for the community sounds really nice. Another thing that I would like to ask you is I don't know if you know the game Mask of Anubis. It is
with VR goggles.
Yeah, so it's a VR-based tabletop game. Well, you don't play it in the VR, but I think some parts of the game require VR. So my question is, how far are we taking this? Or what is there a line? A hybrid game and a digital one, or where is this going?
So I mean, okay, sorry, Dave, I'm speaking a lot, but don't hesitate to. But so here's my view on this, Mehmet. Ultimately we can be very creative, but whatever digital companion app we do, it has to complement a good board game experience. And so, for example, as sexy and interesting as AR, I have not come across yet of a good use of AR that is not just gadgets and completely pointless. And so my point here is that even though technically the possibility is infinite, there is still quite a limited scope of using a good app into a board game. And actually it makes the genre pretty risky in a way. You're more likely to fail trying to make an hybrid board game, digital hybrid board game, than succeed unless you really capture why this app will do something really truly unique and really level up the experience, rather than just add a gadget to it, or just a simplified scoring system or something like this. So for me, this is the ceiling in a way. Is that the ceiling is usability and purpose.
Yeah, I think. It's always hard to predict technology, right? It's infamously hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. I mean, nobody really predicted the extent to which phones were going to take over our lives, right? So I guess there are all kinds of directions that this might go in that we can't really foresee at the moment. I'm sure there'll be a lot more experimentation, a lot more new ideas. And I guess just the whole principle of combining the physical and the digital. I mean, our lives are now always combinations of the physical and digital, right? Especially the past year has been heavily digital in a lot of ways. We more seamlessly move between the physical and the digital than at any point in history. And I kind of feel that that's going to necessarily lead to more nuanced variations of this, where you have something that is potentially heavily digital with a small physical aspect, something where it might change, like you begin purely physical, move into digital, back, I don't know. All these kind of variations will probably emerge in some form, and some of them may succeed and some of them may fail. And an example of something that sort of does that already, which I just thought of, is Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, which you might know, the sort of, I'd say video game, but it kind of doesn't quite feel like a video game, because you print out this paper manual, and one person is sitting there with this paper manual about how to defuse a bomb, and the other person has the bomb on the screen in front of them, and so is kind of being told what to do and how to defuse it. And there you have something that is primarily this digital video game, essentially, experience of defusing the bomb, but kind of has this very physical element of another person sitting there, not looking at a screen, flipping through a book and reading stuff. So it's like one of you is having purely an analog experience, and the other is having purely a digital experience. So that is something very different, I guess, which doesn't quite fit in either box. It's a hybrid thing, but it often isn't described as a hybrid thing, but it is.
Yeah, it's nice that you mentioned that it's I think it's one of the unique experiences that if you're interested in that, I recommend everybody to try that. Like it's nice. Like I mean, I don't know. Like I like asymmetrical games that players do different stuff. Like players play different kind of games in the same game, which is to me, I don't know, like it feels like to me a lot of replayability and a lot of novelty in it. That's why I kind of like these root style games. But anyways, let's not stray too much. So yeah, to wrap things up about this, I see that or I feel like that there's a lot of room for improvement here. I think because these things that I think we all agree that they're giving a lot of tools for designers. There can be a lot of things to be made, and the AR VR thing will be, I mean, undeniably will be there probably, I think. And one last thing about this this model that we researched. Is that how gaming community or like people can be so diverse and and some of them can be so one-sided. Like some of them just says that I despise those games, and like they shouldn't be made because it's interfering with my hobby. This is amazing to me. Like and seeing those is interesting. Okay, so if you yeah, go ahead.
I actually do. I want to add one interesting statistic to all this, because you see 18%. I mean, the percentage you're sharing are, I don't know if they're cumulative or if the same person can check the same thing. But you need to know we've sold at this point more than 500,000 of any SKU in the Chronicles of Crime line. So 500,000 game. This is This is a lot. This is a lot of boxes, and I'm sure the unlock series has some pretty impressive numbers. All I want to say is that even though there is a minority of players who will always be scared of such experience, we found by experience and by sales data that the majority actually welcomes the idea more than anything, and that it's as taboo as it may look from the statistic you just shared. You can still be very successful commercially with an app-driven game.
Okay, folks, we have a question from the audience. Melissa says, when I've interviewed people about these games, something that comes up is the desire to have the whole game inside the box. So many publishers don't want external tools, for example, timers, to be required. Either it's in the app or in the box. I wonder about if the panel has any thoughts on that.
I mean, I'm not sure if I understand fully the question. The question is, it's about having everything in the box versus not having everything in the box, and what do we think about this, basically?
Yes, I think that's it from my understanding, and also attitudes that we have found out. It is, some people says that 4% is like if it's a hybrid game, it's not a standalone game, which bothers them. That's I think relevant to this. So if you have any insights for that, that would be great.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's a game for everybody, right? And the way the Destinies and Chronicles of Crime has been made could not exist without with a book. It just couldn't. And it will run into the limitation of still an amazing game. I'm thinking about Sherlock Holmes Detective Convictive. I think it's really one of the before we created Chronicles of Crime, we all played Sherlock with obsession and with love, with passion. And yet, when we are visiting the same place again, you add the same narrative period, you can't have everything in the box if you want to create and innovate. And ultimately, I genuinely believe there is some. At the end of the day, my view is that it's about the experience. If you don't mind bringing a piece of technology that's not in the box on the table alongside what you, I think we lost Mehmet. Is he back? Oh, here he's back. Okay. Alongside, then you are in for some really interesting and very innovative experience. That's my view, but I think we've lost our host.
Yeah, I think we have. I'm guessing he'll be back in a minute, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah, looks like he's entering.
Hello.
He's back.
Hey, here we go. We
Yeah, my screen just went black.
Okay.
It was a powerful question, I guess.
Can you answer the question, Dave? Maybe you want to add something to it.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting. I mean, I guess it's more about. It's kind of a sort of social change thing. This idea of like everything in the box. I mean, you kind of never have everything in the box, right? I mean, some games need a big table to play on. They don't come with a big table. You like with Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, you almost definitely need a pen. You need paper. With a lot of games, you need that. Some people play, card games and keep track of their scores with pen and paper. Nobody complains the decks of cards don't come with that. And so I kind of think like there's this. I guess like we're at the point now where phones are so integral to our life that like it's very rare to find anybody without one. And I guess as that just becomes more and more accepted as a complete norm, and they become more and more integrated with our life in various ways, I think people aren't going to see them as an extra that is not included in the box. They're just going to be like, obviously, I have everything I need to play this game. In the same way that you need or a pen now.
Yeah, actually, where I saw that shift, it was very interesting, was from the toy industry and specifically the drone industry. The first drone, like 2014, 2012, those first drones, they all had their remote control inside. Now they are all telling you control it with your phone, and there's no remote control integrated with this. It's all using Bluetooth, and it's all accepted that everybody has a phone right now to control their drone. That's really interesting that this is not only a board game trend, but it's also a toy industry trend. Lego, the biggest brand of Lego, anything Lego digital also doesn't come with, is expected for you to have an iPad and an iPhone to control it. Anyway, sorry, I rumbled. Sorry.
All right, so let's, I think, move on with this, and let me quickly show you what we did about motivation for board gaming, and let's see if you think that those are applicable to hybrid gaming as well, or not at all. So, this was Melissa's study as well. That well, it is a more holistic approach, but basically touched on those things as well. And this is the Quantic Foundry's 4 motivation clusters. That's about board gaming motivation profile. So this profile is mine actually, but it consists of conflict, strategy, immersion, and social fun. And they have come up with second motivations as well for those: social manipulation, discovery, aesthetics, and cooperation. So it seems that I like to be immersed in strategy games. If you look at the blue trapezoid, and also I like discovery, aesthetics, and cooperation in games. So that's well, this is kind of the gold standard in motivation and in gaming mostly, because they have a huge data, thousands of people. But also we took a stab at this as well, to come up with like a public scale that researchers can use, and not like a private privatized items. So
I'm sorry to interrupt. Where can we see this data offline if we want to look it up later?
You mean the Quantic Foundry one, or
the slides, or the actual data, whatever you have available?
I can share everything somewhere, somehow at the end of this. Is that a question from the crowd, or?
I was just noting that it's a little small. So if you want to maybe put it into the Discord, we can include it as links.
Yeah, I could do that, but probably later. Or right now? Do you need?
No, later should be fine. Great.
Okay. So maybe if I zoom it like really close, does that look good also?
Yeah, I
or
think
better, or better. Andy, can you check?
I can see it there.
Okay. So what I was saying is that we basically came up with these subscales of motivation, board gaming motivation. So these were like customization, escapism, relationship, mastery, story fantasy, socializing, competition, arousal, autonomy, teamwork, and aesthetic. So these were the prevalent motivations of players towards analog, like purely analog games. My question to you guys is, do you think those are, absolutely like directly applicable to hybrid gaming, or do you think that there would be differences? There are other motivations that people might have towards hybrid gaming. One thing that I can think of is, for instance, like the novelty aspect of it. Like people that never tried it wants to maybe give that a try and like see how the experiences is. And looking at these subscales or like sub motivations, do you think that those make sense to you when you think of, for instance, Chronicles of Crime, or other app-driven games, or Alchemist, for instance, or anything different?
In my view, all of this makes still sense, even for Chronicles of Crime or Destinies, because ultimately we are board gamers and board game publishers, and we do deliver a product that plays like a board game and therefore cater the same community. The only difference is that we have innovative way to serve the experience this player will experience, like this experience, basically because of the digital nature of some of the content they're interfacing with. But I think that all the parameters you're sharing here, I think makes still complete sense for a digital hybrid game as well, because at the end of the day, it is a board game. It is something that you'll play either in a competitive or cooperative way, either seeking victory against others, either seeking victory as a group, trying to puzzle, trying to make your way through the puzzle that the game throws at you, or to try to immerse yourself through the thematic story that you're reading. I think all of those parameters, I think, are strictly the same, even for digital hybrid. But that's just my opinion. I don't know, Dave, where you stand there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely kind of the same principles will apply. I guess I think like hybrid games, like you said, Mehmet, maybe some people haven't tried them will be curious, and that can be an extra motivation. Just they want to see how they work and what they're like. I guess the divide between players who don't like hybrid games using apps and those that do is I guess it's kind of a separate thing to me, a sort of a different dimension in that they probably both this probably kind of matches them both in a lot of ways, but then they just have this extra thing where some players are just like, no, I don't want anything digital when I'm playing a game, and other players are like, I'm fine with digital when I'm playing a game. And those players, I mean, maybe there are some players who really always want digital elements. I'm not sure. I haven't met anybody who said that, but there may well be some out there. But I mean, the main thing is the experience, right? And I think it's the fact that for some people, in their mindset, having something digital somehow impinges on the experience that they want in a way that just makes it unsatisfying. That isn't the type of experience they want. They'll get all this stuff out of their experience, but they don't want a digital thing because it impinges on it. That's one set of people. And then for the other set of people for whom the digital stuff doesn't have that negative impact, it all just comes down to the general experience. And if the digital stuff enhances that, it's going to enhance these kind of things, right? They could be enhanced in other ways, but in a purely analog game. But as we already discussed, the digital thing opens up specific avenues to enhancing it, which aren't available by other means very easily.
Yeah, it makes sense. Actually, before we move on, and I ask you about the purchase intentions of people, which may or may not be the same as these, since we're, I think we only have like 15 minutes before the time runs out. I want to ask something that I was going to ask at the end, but I'm not sure we will have time. So I want to ask it before that, which I think is very important. So since, I am mostly like looking at things from the research aspect and, designing for research mostly, my question is for you, mostly like, it's not only in games, it's in academia or like in research in general. Sometimes like we are so committed and like, so interested in what we are doing, we sometimes tend to like miss what the industry needs, if that makes sense, and like what is actually being done. And like, if you don't have the ties and like, you don't know what are the actual challenges that people have, be it players, be it, designers, be it publishers. If we know that better, then we could be of more service, and like we could actually create more meaningful stuff. We could carry out research that is more meaningful to not only ourselves and for the scientific community, but also for designers, publishers, and alike. And my question is that, do you think, or like just tell me one thing that would make total sense and like that would be really useful for designers or publishers. I mean, you might be doing your own research and as well, but if you have like a research team or like research person that was working with you, what would you like to know about tabletop gaming community, or the design itself, or about like publishing processes, anything that comes to mind. It can be anything. And also, I would also like to continue this discussion after this, later on. I think it's important to see the challenges and like conduct bespoke research, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you have any insights for that, that would be great for game researchers in general. It might be a hard question, but still, yeah.
Yeah, you can see from here. Like I'm pondering. The truth is that actually what you, for example, the data you were sharing earlier was very interesting and something we already experience in a very practical way. Every time we release a game, we see all this, all this negative and positive voices. To be honest, I don't know. It's a really hard question, and certainly something I will think about and come back to you, Mehmet. We do not have a research team. We are not as data driven as what I used to do in video game. In the free to play industry, where I come from, we used to be extremely data driven. We used to analyze in an anonymized way, player profile and player interaction, is because monetization was dependent of our understanding of this. I would say in that regard, we're maybe a bit lazy, because this product is sold up front, and if it's good, it will sell. If it's not, it will not. The need of the granularity of understanding and data analytics that on this genre is not as needed as the genre where I come from, which is the purely digital gaming. But I'm sure if you really want me to dig, I'm sure there's plenty we can look for. I would probably ask my team to answer that question.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. That would be awesome. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I guess, like, from my view, I guess there are just some things that I might be interested in, like stuff about how people perceive games in different parts of the world or whatever, how different types of game go down in different cultures, like, and things like that. There's nothing that I can think that would sort of really inform my design stuff. I guess my design stuff, like, the research that informs it is not game research. It's like research about historical stuff, or like real life processes, science, whatever, huge array of things to put in some sense of realism and whatever in the theme and stuff. So I guess that is more the research I do, and it informs the game design. And I'm more and I think this is generally true in board games, and kind of like Vincent said, it's a bit more intuitive than a lot of the video game industry has become, where there is this kind of very detailed analysis and then sort of designing things for a target market, quite heavily money motivated. And it's not really the way I design. I always kind of, if I really like an idea, I will kind of want to make it, even if it only ever sits on my table and I see my friends and family play it. Obviously, I'd always then like it to be published, probably, but like, for me, crafting and making an interesting idea is the main thing. So the sort of research data for how things are in the world isn't relevant from that perspective. But it did bring up, as Vincent was talking, I have a question. So you're going to say something there, Vincent, but I also have a question for you, because it suddenly occurred to me, is do you get data from the app about people's choices or the time they take playing? Do you get that data, or is that not collected? And if it's not collected, would it be useful to you, or would you want to collect it?
So, I come from the free-to-play industry, and this is a problem that that is very often. Yes, we collect this data. It's very easy to collect it. It's completely anonymous. We don't know who, what, how, but we do have the number of a creation of a certain type of event. We know how many people have blown up a certain building, or we know how many people have finished the game in a certain language. We know how. The issue is, and it was my issue in free-to-play games, is that then you need someone to take the time to analyze it. But that's not even where it stops. Because if you put, and I used to run a company that used to have 7 full-time R&D people. When it comes to free-to-play, 100 people, we had 7 researchers crunching data for us. But even with the 7 people, even if they found some really amazing thing, then these had to still come back to the development team into practical ways. And often this is where this bridge is lost, is that there is all this research, but the bridge of bringing that research into a practical, and it's not by lack of wanting, it's often because the team making the game is often in never-ending rush, is in pure execution, and like, oh, that sounds so great, but for now my backlog is full, so I'll come back to your ideas. And unfortunately, there is often this fail that this doesn't make it. And we managed to bridge that gap by actually making those researchers not a company-wide resource, but actually a per product resource. So each were assigned specific to, they were part of the daily selling. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm getting way too detailed into the execution and usage of this data. But there is one that I found really fascinating, and I don't know how we could measure it. Because there is a huge difference between the video game and the board game industry, which correlates into kind of the swing that we see between people's appreciation of a game, and it's the rules. Because when you go through a video game, and let me tell you, what my team in video game industry will spend 6 months obsessively will be the first 20 minutes of the game. The first 20 minutes will be like dissected, analyzed, overnight for 6 months of 10 people to make sure that onboarding is perfect, play tested, and that everybody goes through 100% the same experience, learn the game 100% the same way, and that we fall everybody. We don't have this luxury in board game. In board game, people pick up that rule book. Some may open a video, some may read the rule book, some may get it, some may not. And so this variation in understanding the rules is something that terrifies me as a publisher. Because if you fail that, you fail the experience. And so there is something interesting with the digitalization, the digital hybrid, which is it brings the advantage that you don't have to read the rule book. And so I wonder what will be the data between, and I don't know how to measure that, but there is definitely something that I would love about, how stable is a note and how stable is a rating versus having analog learning of the rule versus hybrid digital learning of the rule, and how this plays in the variation of rating the game and the swing that it has. So.
I think there's something that you mentioned that's really important. I think that I hear it from friends from the digital gaming industry that who works there as researchers. The main problem is that you mentioned that as well. Apparently, once tabletop games started to get digitized, we have that problem in tabletop gaming as well, which is the transition from the research to the development itself. Like, how do we use those data or like the meaningful information that's gathered by the researchers to actual game itself? So that might be a good area to focus for researchers, maybe. I mean, other researchers to actually streamline that process. Like, I know it's not easy, but I hear that a lot from friends from the digital gaming industry as well. So let's I mean, we only have a couple of minutes, I think. So let's just move on, and I'll show you one last slide, and just finish with that. So this is something that we ran. Also, this is I hope it's kind of visible. Let me just quickly go over it in a minute. This is the purchase intentions for analog games. So basically, this is an exploratory study. We just put in some of the things that in literature, from literature that might be related to board games. We didn't do any qualitative analysis or something like that. We did added those and then crunched the numbers. And then one thing that I'll mention, and then I'll ask you for the last minute, is that do you think that, well, first let me tell you what this data shows us. First of all, income was not related to purchase intentions, okay? Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, even if it's slightly associated, age was correlated with purchase intentions. So we were thinking that as people gets paid more, we thought that they would buy more, but that wasn't the case. And when we look at age, with the increasing age, purchase intentions slightly increased as well, which can be attributed to income. But since we see it now that it is not, why do you think that is the case? People have more time when they get older, or there's something else going on there? And also, one last thing I'll mention is the positive word of mouth, the importance of that, even more than the age. Hearing a good review, hearing something good about the game makes it not an instant purchase, but it's a good contributor. So what do you think about age and word of mouth?
Well, I'll start with the word of mouth. I often compare board game shop to a wine shop. If you've ever been to a wine shop and you don't know wine, your answer is like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? I am like, please, sir, can you help me? Because I don't know. I mean, obviously, most of us right on this panel may be truly passionate and know everything that's going on the same way that there are a circle of wine passionate who know every bottle, most of that in the shelf. But the word of mouth is everything, because often it's such a noisy background. There's so many releases, more and more. We're not nowhere close to the video game industry, but still there's the increase of release. And so this word of mouth is third-party validation. It is actually more important than actually that third-party review, because it really is from someone else. It's like from someone in a group. And in a way, the Facebook groups drive. Often you read, since I've joined this Facebook group, my shelf is just exploding with board games, because you read this and you see this person seems genuine, just someone like you who says some incredible word about this. That sounds great. I'm looking for a board game. I'm going to buy this one. It sounds like what I need. And so I think this is the biggest driver. I can see that. And as of age, they call it the 40 years old crisis and the 50 years old crisis. I think as you get older, this is my very personal and completely non-data driven interpretation of life. Okay, so take it with your pinch of this, but in my view, there is a sense of this is where I am. I'm 42 years old, and I have a ridiculous collection of board games. And I'd say it's not really necessary to my income, but rather for this, kind of, my kids are older. I have more time for myself and for my passions, and this is where I decided to put it. And so that will be my completely empirical interpretation of that thing.
Okay, Vincent, I'm sorry to interrupt here. We're a little bit over already. One question from the audience, just real quick. Is this a linear regression or factor analysis?
This was a multiple regression. So it was not a SEM, structural equation, but multiple regression.
Okay, and just last but not least, tell us where we can find you online. Tell us where we can get in touch with you if we want.
So for me personally, I have a Twitter, my name and surname, and then underscore between them. Other than that, I have, you can see my info there and like DM me there, and I can send you all of the, information that was on the slides. I can give you my email, mkosa@asu.edu. And yeah, looking forward to connect.
And you can find thanks. You can find me at Dave Neale Writer on Twitter. Just like all one word, Dave Neale and then Writer. And I don't tweet a lot, but I tweet now doing a weekly thing on Clubhouse, the social app, where you talk audio based. We're doing largely a weekly thing about cultural and psychological aspects of game and game design, called Press Pause, that's on Sundays at 12:30 Eastern or 5:30 UK time. So I put links to that and my Twitter, and if you're on Clubhouse, you can find me at Dave Neale as well. So.
And me, it's simple, just Vincent@lucky.games.com. That's the best way to reach me out. I'm an old dude who likes email. So thank you so much for having us, Mehmet.
Yeah, it was really great talking to you guys, and thank you for attending, and looking forward to continue the discussion.
Thank you, Mehmet.